The day that actually Taliban entered Kabul and Afghan government officially collapsed, Afghan president ran away. I was there. And I was actually running for my own life. I came to the French embassy where, the outlet that I was working for belongs to this country, and I had an application there. There was a sort of chaos, in the city. Everyone was running for their own life. No one knew that what to do. It was around 10 a.m. that the rumors started among the people that Taliban have entered Kabul city from the west part of Kabul city. And I don't know what happened, that everyone was, somehow escaping the west of the Kabul, and they were coming toward the center of Kabul and toward the eastern part of the Kabul. So it was it was a chaos.
Welcome to episode 108 of the Mikhaila Peterson podcast. This is a shorter episode and more of a news segment, really, about what's been going on in Afghanistan. I spoke with Zakarya Hassani in today's episode. We spoke about the restrictions put on the people of Afghanistan by the Taliban, whether the situation of the Taliban taking over the government was inevitable, the next best steps, if any, the history of the Taliban, and more. Zakarya Hassani is an Afghanistan-based journalist who fled the country just days ago once the Taliban overtook Kabul, where he was stationed. Share this episode if you found it informative, and remember to hit subscribe if you enjoy this content or at least learn something. Zakarya Hassani, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I've been following what's been going on in Afghanistan and thought it might be interesting to talk to somebody who was there. So I guess before we get started, could you give a brief background about who you are?
I'm Zakarya Hassani, an Afghanistan-based journalist. I started my work as a journalist, as a local reporter for one of the leading TV channels in Kabul, Afghanistan in 2014. I was working with them until May 2017. Once in 2015, when for the first time Kunduz city in the north of Afghanistan fell to Taliban. Taliban threatened me and a number of my colleagues for the special coverage and exclusive coverage of the incident that we had. And in 2018, I joined RFI, Radio France International, up to 2 weeks ago that I was in Kabul, and I was actually covering Afghanistan for RFI. But right now it's about 5 days that I moved to Paris. 3 days after Kabul fell to Taliban.
Okay, so what do things look like there? Like when you say Kabul fell to the Taliban, what do things look like on the ground there right now?
Well, the day that actually Taliban entered Kabul and the Afghan government officially collapsed, Afghan president ran away. I was there, and I was actually running for my own life. I came to the French embassy where, the outlet that I was working for belongs to this country, and I had an application there. So there was a sort of chaos, in the city. Everyone was running for their own life. No one knew that what to do. It was around 10 a.m. that the rumors started among the people that Taliban have entered Kabul city from the west part of Kabul city. And I don't know what happened, that everyone was, somehow escaping the west of the Kabul, and they were coming toward the center of Kabul and toward the eastern part of the Kabul. So it was it was a chaos. And so I'm sure that you have seen the footage coming out from the Kabul airport. So that is a consequences of that day, and that it can clearly, gives you a sort of image that what is going on in Kabul and what's going on totally in Afghanistan. So if we talk separately in about every corner of Afghanistan, for example, in those areas, in remote areas of Afghanistan that now Taliban are controlling or fully controlling them, the group could somehow implement their restrict rules as they had the same rules in 1990s. But in terms of Kabul, that more people are here, the journalists are here, the international journalists are here, so there are medias, there are channels and ways to disclose the Taliban's atrocities. They somehow, avoided themselves of, doing the same thing as they are actually, doing in the rural areas of Afghanistan. So um, I think we have gone back to the 1990s. It is a big setback for Afghan people. It's a big setback for Afghanistan.
Okay, so you talked a bit about the the kind of rule that they have and the kind of restrictions they put on people. Can you just
Yeah.
give me a bit more information about what
Yes.
that looks like?
In the past 3 days, I talked to people on the ground. For example, we talked to girls in Bamyan, in rural Bamyan province, which is an ancient province which is home to the biggest Buddhas of Afghanistan, destroyed 20 years ago by the Taliban. We talked to the girls in Bamyan, in other provinces like Herat City and Kabul. The girls were telling us that they are not allowed to go out without a man companions. Those who come out of their house without covering themselves by hijab or burqa, they will be lashed out. So those who do not have men companion, they will face some fierce consequences by the group. And one of my friends in Bamyan also told me that there was a young girl on their farm. A group of Taliban militants approached her and they gang raped that girl. This is something that eyewitnesses told him, and he somehow shared the stories with me. Gang raped her, and after that they shot her for no reason. So this is a corner of that story. I'm sure there are plenty of this sort of a story that you can find across Afghanistan, but unfortunately, as access has been limited since the Taliban took control of those areas, so right now we receive very few of these sort of stories. But I'm sure if you talk to the people on the ground, you can find out more about this. And the other part is that when you talk to the people, they somehow are scared of their own lives. So that is why they prevent talking to us, they prevent talking to media, to journalists. Uh, but what we have found is that Taliban do not allow girls to continue to go to school or continue studying more than 7th grade. So they are not allowed to go to the universities. Musics are banned on the streets. You cannot listen to music as we used to, listen to musics on the streets of Kabul and other big cities of Afghanistan. Now it is prohibited. And if you listen to music, you will face consequences. So if you wear jeans, then they will also lash you out. They will also punish you. They are just in favor of wearing traditional clothes, which we call that pirahan tumban. And also their fighters are wearing that. That is the only clothing wearing, that they are in favor of that, and they like that, unfortunately. And if you wear, for example, jeans, t-shirts, or suit, then I don't know what they're gonna do with you.
Okay, so in the Western media, I've seen some articles come out that are hopeful that the Taliban will be a reasonable government. I saw something from NATO that was like, well, if you have, equal rights for women or something, then maybe we could potentially recognize your government. So, what do you think they're doing with this? Are they putting on a different face for some of the media for the Western world? Or like where's the discrepancy there?
Well, this is something that the Taliban try to impose or somehow impose on the international community. Since they captured Afghanistan, most of the provinces, and after they entered Kabul, they repeatedly try to tell international community that, yeah, we are not the same Taliban as we were in 1990s. We have changed. We have a different approach towards women rights, towards human rights, towards freedom of expressions, towards minorities. But unfortunately, I think this is a strategy, to give themselves somehow, or to be legitimized by the international community. But unfortunately, what we see on the ground, that proves completely the wrong way. It somehow contradicted their words with their action. In Kabul city, we have seen people that they have been punished. They had their hands been chopped off, by the Taliban for robbery. In other provinces, the robbers or maybe other people are being, hanged up. The Taliban saying that we have hanged them up, because of the robbery, but there wasn't any court at all. Without to be prosecuted, they have been punished, by the Taliban in some parts of Afghanistan. In Herat province, Taliban just killed the families of a journalist, a Deutsche Welle journalist, while he was escaped, but but for revenge, they went to his house, searched for him, but when they couldn't find him, so they punished him and by killing their family members and wounding another one, torturing another one, unfortunately. And yeah, when they said that our approach has changed towards women rights, but on the ground it's not the same. They said that women should wear hijab, should wear burqa. So this is the same Taliban that was the same rule that they were preaching in 1990s. When they are saying that we have our approach changed in terms of minorities, no, we have heard a few days ago, and even yesterday, not the day before yesterday, they killed about 6 Hazara people in Bamyan for no reason. The same news, the same report we have received that they killed some Hazara people in Ghazni province, which are the minorities, the Shiite minorities in Afghanistan. So in terms of the education, that previously girls' education were totally banned, now they only allow them to go to school up to 7th grade. But this is, only the start. Maybe if they fully take control of the government and the country, we don't know what will happen. Even maybe they totally ban girls from going to school. So I personally haven't seen that change in Taliban that Zalmay Khalilzad, the special representative of United States for Afghanistan peace process, were repeatedly trying to say that Taliban have changed. They are not the same as they were in 1990s, or when the Taliban themselves saying that we have changed and we have different approach towards the past 20 years values and achievements that we have achieved. So what we see on the ground, unfortunately, prove it wrong. They are not changed. They are the same.
Okay. Do you think that this kind of resurgence was inevitable if the United States was leaving, or is it something that could have been stopped?
It was inevitable, but it is something that we have to give it hours to talk about it. But if I make it very brief, it starts from the Doha agreement that United States signed an agreement with the Taliban uh, in Doha. This agreement somehow legitimized Taliban on the international level and on the regional level. Following that, it is the weakness and the lack of will in the Afghan leadership that unfortunately led Afghanistan to the point and to the dark days that unfortunately nowadays we are going through. United States agreement with the Taliban give Taliban, somehow legitimize Taliban and give them legitimation. Legitimize them, and the lack of will in the Afghan leadership somehow brought them inside Afghanistan. But beside this, I believe that nothing of these things could happen. Taliban could not capture Afghanistan, could not occupy Afghanistan, because we had a strong army. During the past 20 years, we fortunately could build and could form an army. But I think there was a sort of dirty deal between, I don't know, between Afghanistan's leadership and the Taliban and maybe United States that brought Taliban back to Afghanistan. We have heard, from the generals, from the soldiers on the ground, that Taliban were capturing if one after another provincial capital without any fighting. For example, I talked to some generals in north of Afghanistan. They told me that we left the province 4 hours before Taliban entered the provincial capital without a single bullet to be shot. So this shows clearly that there was a sort of deal between the leadership and between the Taliban. On the day that Taliban entered Kabul, I myself witnessed this one. When I was going toward my house in west of Kabul, and then I came back to the center of Kabul, I saw no police, no army, no soldiers on the streets of Kabul. So Kabul was handed over without any fight. So the same story, the same fate, actually or the same thing happened in another provinces. So this story was available, but unfortunately there wasn't any will.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. How are you safe talking about this stuff? You said you left to get out of Afghanistan and you're in Paris.
So when I was in Kabul, the day actually, Taliban entered Kabul, they sent me a threat on my Twitter account that, yeah, we are coming towards Kabul. We have monitored your Twitter account for so long. And when we entered Kabul, we know what to do with you. So that time I was at the French embassy and I was safe. But after 3 days after Kabul fell to Taliban, I could fortunately I had the chance to leave Kabul, and now I'm in Paris. So I feel myself safe, but still I have relatives, I have family there that I'm worried about them. But this is something that I cannot, as a journalist, I cannot, keep quiet, because those people, my family, my relatives, other journalists who are already in Kabul, and they cannot speak up because of their own safety, which is, understandable. So I think it's my duty that I should speak up on behalf of them, and I should, face the risk and face the consequences of that.
Do you think there's anything like what do you think the best steps would be now? Does Afghanistan need international support? Is there anything that can be done, or was this just simmering for the last 20 years and it was going to happen at some point?
I think international community has already made its decision. Uh, if I go back to the weeks ago and months ago that Taliban started the offensive, they started capturing Afghanistan, one province after another provinces. So there wasn't, any. I couldn't see any serious and strong reaction from the international community and also from the United States. When Taliban, for example, was capturing a very key province, there was only a very ordinary statement. You could only witness a very ordinary statement from the international community, which means that they have no problem, they have no problem with a Taliban control on Afghanistan. So I think that right now that Afghanistan is totally in control of the Taliban, I'm not sure that the international community again come back and start supporting people of Afghanistan, because it's too late. I believe it's too late. Right now, they are in control of Kabul. They are in control of every part of Kabul, every part of Afghanistan. There is only one province, which is Panjshir, that the resistance force have stepped up and they started fighting back Taliban. But there's still less hope, because though Panjshir is surrounded by the Taliban, they have no way out, and the only way that they can receive support is through air corridor, which is very difficult. They have to talk with the regional powers, they have to talk with the or negotiate with the international community. But I believe this is too late. International community could help the people of Afghanistan a few weeks ago, even a week ago, that Kabul didn't fall to Taliban. So now I believe it's too late. Unfortunately, we lost what we had achieved in the past 20 years. We lost our army, we lost our infrastructure, and now we have been pushed back to the 1990s, and uh, offsetting this is very difficult.
Yeah, well, that's not good. Is it possible? I read something the other day, and I don't know how much of what I read online is true, but is it possible for people to leave? Like, are they letting people out?
You know, in the absence of economy, in the absence of employment, in the absence of security, I think this is very difficult to keep living there. It's obvious that there isn't any suicide attack, because in the past it was Taliban who carried out suicide attacks. But these days, Taliban cannot maintain the security in Kabul. There are lots of robberies. People are disguising in Taliban uniform, and they are stopping people, rob their belongings. They enter people's house in the name of Taliban, and they steal everything. The banks, it's more than a week that the banks are closed. There are lots of families who have someone outside of Afghanistan to send them money, but Western Union has been closed in Afghanistan. There are no ways to somehow transfer them money. I have a friend that yesterday he posted something on his Facebook. His economic level, his financial level is so good. He had an iPhone 12 Pro Max. He just put something on a post on his Facebook page and said that because all the banks are closed, I have no money left in my pocket, and in order to feed myself, I'm ready to sell my iPhone 12 Pro Max. Anyone who is eager for any cost, I can sell this to him. So this clearly shows that how desperate people are, and how black these days are in Afghanistan. So I believe it's very difficult for Afghan people to keep living like this. There should be a government as soon as possible, and things should be corrected. Otherwise, people, all the people will flee, as we are noticing right now. Thousands of people gathered at the Kabul airport. Thousands more, and are fleeing from the borders towards Iran and Pakistan. So thousands more already. Already they fled Afghanistan. So this means that people of Afghanistan do not want Taliban, do not want Taliban regime. They don't want to be disconnected again from the world.
What's the likelihood of, do you think this is going to get worse? Like, do you think that they're already in power, but is there going to be any fight back, or is it just they're too strong?
I believe Taliban is not a group that could govern Afghanistan. And I believe that a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan is the start of another crisis, could be the start of another civil war, as we are, seeing the very first and earliest sign of that. In Panjshir, as I said before, people started resisting Taliban in Baghlan province. Again, people started resisting the Taliban. Some other forces are also joining these resistant forces in order to fight the Taliban and to take back their lands, because people cannot live with their ideology, with their rules. And you know Taliban, what Taliban knows is only about pure, allegedly what they say, pure Islam. What they have their own interpretation of Islam. They don't know about governing. They don't know about financial issues. They don't know about how to govern a country, how to have an administration, how to have a relationship with with the world and with the countries. So I believe that this is their start, and Afghanistan situations, can become more, can could be deteriorated, and we will see, some bad days ahead.
What's the difference between their religion and and I guess I don't know. I need more information about like
Yeah.
what most people believe who are in Afghanistan and then what they believe.
Well, 90% of Afghanistans are Muslim. Muslims are divided into Shiite and Sunni sectarian. The majority of Afghan people are Sunni, and Taliban are also a very, extremist Sunni group, militia group. They believe that whoever followed the same rule that they follow, they are in the circle of, Islam as they are. But those who are, somehow preaching or practicing or following some moderate forms of Islam, they are no more Muslims, and they are infidels. They will be labeled as infidels, as they labeled them in the 1990s. For example, most of Hazara minorities in Afghanistan, most of them are Shiite. So they have been killed in the past because of their religion, because of their belief, because of their ethnicity, because of their beliefs. So in the past 20 years, Taliban also carried out suicide attacks, targeted, um, high profile attacks on organizations, on centers that actually, there were homes, or actually they were serving the Hazara people or Shiite people of Afghanistan, specifically in Kabul. All those, mosques, wedding halls, sports clubs, and maternity ward that were targeted before in Kabul,
Oh,
all of them, belong to somehow Hazara people and Shiite people. So this clearly shows that they still believes that non-Sunni people or non-Muslim people, we have some other peoples who believe, for example, in other religion, that they are, the number of them are, quite, there are quite few. So they believe that if you follow the same rules as they follow, you're Muslim. Otherwise, you will be labeled as infidel, and they allow themselves to remove you and to kill you.
okay. And so they follow the Quran to the word, right? Like every single part of it.
No, no. There are some only, some parts of Quran, they are reading that, reciting that, and they have their own interpretation of that. For example,
Oh,
maybe I could have the same, my own interpretation of that part of Quran, but they have their own interpretation. They have their, that backwarded interpretation. The word is fast changing, but Taliban are not changing. They have the same idea, the same thinking, and the same, belief as they had 20 years ago and 30 years ago. So they are not a group to be, a group to change. They are not a group, to have a peaceful life with other peoples, with other beliefs. They are not a group to tolerate, oppositions. So I believe they have come here. They have a mission, and their mission is to destroy Afghanistan.
okay. When did they form that group?
Well, they were formed in the 1995 when there was a civil war in Afghanistan between the different parties in Afghanistan. So Mullah Omar, officially Mullah Omar was, the first leader and the founder of Taliban group. Mullah Omar was from Kandahar city in the west of Afghanistan. Kandahar city is actually the birthplace of Taliban group. At first, Taliban was supported by Pakistan and some other regional countries in order to bring the stability in Afghanistan, and to fight other parties in Afghanistan that each of them were supported by different countries. So uh,
Oh,
they could, at first in 1995, they could very capture Afghanistan very rapidly. So they could govern Afghanistan till 1991. That we have seen that what happened in the United States in September 11, 9/11, and following that, Taliban attacked Afghanistan, and the Taliban regime were collapsed within 2 months. And there was the Northern Alliance that actually, with the help of other parties, they formed a strong alliance in the north of Afghanistan alongside of the United States. They fought the Taliban. So what I can tell you about the Taliban is that this is not a Taliban group is not with a long history. They was if you just look at back, their story goes to 25 years ago. They
okay.
were formed. Yeah, the Taliban group was formed, during this Afghan civil war, with an aim
Okay.
to bring the stability to the country. Not they didn't achieve that one, but the situation just got worse.
Okay. Well, is there anything else I should know about this or that you want to tell people about the situation in Afghanistan? Maybe what news sources could be trusted?
Um, I think it's quite difficult. Any journalists that step inside Afghanistan, they are somehow controlled by the Taliban,
Yeah.
being oppressed by the Taliban. So maybe if there is a journalist inside Afghanistan, they are live reporting to Western media outlets. You should not 100% believe that one, because when you step inside a city that is surrounded with militia, with savage militia group, that they have no fear of killing you. Of course, there should be some risk. Of course, there should be some precautions, that the journalists should, take care of themselves. They are reporting somehow, but what the information that coming out through media, they are not 100%, they're not that sort of information that we should, lie on them 100%. But there are people on the ground that we can, for a clearer image, we can keep in touch with them, ask them about what is the real situation on the ground. Right now I cannot recommend, a media outlet and news sources that we could get our news from them. And let's see what will happen next.
Okay. Well, can I direct people to follow you anywhere on social media?
Yes, of course.
So what's your Twitter handle? You're most active on Twitter, right?
Yeah, that is Zaid Hassani 7.
Okay. I'll link
Zaid
that
H,
below.
yeah, Zaid HASSANI 7.
Okay. Got it. Well, thank you very much for coming on. That's horrible that that's happening. Sorry you had to leave. That's
Thank
scary.
you for having me.
Yeah. Okay.